life insurers put life into the things you live for. The new factory that's hiring your neighbors. Maintenance on the bridge that keeps traffic flowing. The paycheck that puts pizza night on the table. Life insurers contribute $8 trillion to communities and local economies through bond purchases and other investments, and protect the financial security of 90 million American families, like yours. See how life insurers put life into America at acli.com. Paid for by the American Council of Life Insurers.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Now we shift to one of my favorite senators in the entire United States Senate, and that's Kevin Cramer of the great state of North Dakota. Senator, I know you've got soccer games this afternoon and all this stuff with the grandkids and kids. Thanks so much for carving out some time for us.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Steve. And I'm just grateful to hear of your success on the radio, and I'm not even a little bit surprised. But if you can make economics fun, I'm all for it. But
Exactly.
the most fun economics can be is when they're good.
Well, I got a question for you. You got to help me get your stations there in North Dakota on our show, because I think we got a couple of them. But
we got to get. Why don't your buddy Scott Hennon and Flag Family Media?
I'm going to
book you. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great idea. Great idea. I do Scott's show a lot, and he's got the biggest radio station. Now, most of our listeners don't know a lot about North Dakota, Senator. I bet a lot of them haven't even been to North Dakota. Are you in North Dakota right now, sir?
I am. I'm in Fargo. I'm in a parking lot of West Acres Shopping Center, which isn't very sexy, but it's Fargo.
Oh, that's great. So I love North Dakota. I've been there for many energy conferences because I think, I think a lot of our listeners are aware, but some of them probably aren't aware that North Dakota has become an energy capital of the world. Explain how that happened.
Well, first of all, God blessed us with a lot of rich minerals. We have a lot of oil, a lot of gas, a lot of coal, and a lot of ingenuity. We also have a stewardship culture in agriculture, which allows us to take good care of the land and the water and the air.
So you've got a lot of wheat. Is it wheat? Is it wheat that you grow?
We have a lot of wheat. We have a lot of corn. We're number one producer of sunflowers, honey, wheat, barley, a whole bunch of crops, a lot of soybeans, of course. I think we have like 6 of the top 10 producing counties in soybeans. So we do it all, and we look to sell it to lots of people.
Now, here on the East Coast, where I am, I'm in D.C. today, Washington, D.C., where it's 95 degrees and it's hot and humid. I bet it's not hot and humid today in North Dakota.
Well, according to my car, it's 82 degrees right now, but it's on its way to 90. So,
well, that's hot for North Dakota.
It is, yeah. It is.
There. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about a few things, if I may, and again, appreciate you. I know how busy you are, and you fly back and forth to D.C. all the time. I mean, you've got one of the longest commutes. But let's talk about the big, beautiful bill. We are all hopeful. Have you got a guess about when we're going to get this thing passed out of the Senate?
About the time that every Republican senator is ready to tip over from voting all night long, at least through one night, maybe two. So it's really more about the human condition than it is about the calendar or the clock.
Now, so what you're talking about is something they call votorama, right? Where you have all these amendments and that can go on for hours and hours and hours and hours. And when do you expect that will begin?
I think it'll begin Thursday, the way it's looking. I think so. So, the goal, of course, is to have a bill done and passed out of the Senate by the 4th of July, or maybe, even by the 1st of July, in which case the House could come back and give it a thumbs up and the president could sign it on Independence Day. Wouldn't that be appropriate?
That would be awesome. So what do you like? I was on Larry Kudlow's radio show earlier today, and we both agreed we give the Senate bill a B+, which is a pretty good grade. Not an A, but a B+.
Not bad for you guys. You're tough graders.
We're tough graders. So are you happy with the bill?
I am, Steve, because remember, the reason it's a big, beautiful bill is because I think, the post-traumatic stress that still exists from 2017 when we had a bill that passed the House, I think by one vote, to eliminate and repeal and replace Obamacare, got, of course, the big thumbs down from John McCain, and it failed by one vote in the Senate. And so not wanting to run the risk of incremental pieces of legislation, which, by the way, I would have preferred. However, one big, beautiful bill presents the best opportunity to pass a lot of things in addition to the most important thing, Steve, and this is why I like the bill, that making the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act the Donald Trump 2017 tax package that you and Larry Kudlow helped create, making that policy permanent law is worth a lot of other stuff that gets attached to it now, right?
Senator,
so some of the things are good and some of them aren't.
We got to take a hard break. Can I hold you on to the next segment? Do you have a few minutes?
Of course.
By the way, Kevin Cramer, did you ever watch the movie Jaws?
Oh, many times. I haven't gone swimming since, for 50 years. Yeah,
exactly. It hurt the beach towns a lot that people were afraid to go in the water. I remember that first scene where the girl goes out into the ocean in the middle of late at night, and the shark is chasing her. That's one of the scariest movies of any movie. So I wanted to just get that in, folks, because we celebrate the great movies. And by the way, do you remember the most famous quote in that movie, Senator?
Oh, I do not. Okay. I'm sure I will when you say it.
It was, it looks like we're going to need a bigger boat. Anyway, so I'm here. We have fun on this show. I'm here with the great Senator Kevin Cramer from the great state of North Dakota, and we're talking about all the things that are going on in the Senate. And the senator is saying we might be able to get this bill done by and passed and signed. Boy, I agree with you. Wouldn't that be cool if Trump could sign this bill to liberate the American economy on July 4th. I'm a little doubtful, but it would be cool if he could. So one of the things I'm concerned with, Senator, is that I don't understand why we're not getting rid of these Green New Deal subsidies. We had something in our hotline the other day, and I know you get the hotline, and I know a lot of your colleagues do, and a lot of our listeners do. And, some of these, we're not getting rid of some of these crazy wind and solar subsidies for another 10 years. I don't understand it.
Well, and there's a lot of work being done on that, Steve, as we speak.
Good.
Some of it's this. Some of it is just that the utilities and the big energy companies have been investing in wind farms and solar farms and things for the last 20, 30 years. In case of the production tax credit for wind, it's been around almost 35 years, Steve.
I know.
They wouldn't put up a single wind turbine without the subsidy. However,
that's true.
When they make investments based on current law, and then they feel sort of like you're pulling the rug out from under them.
That's true, too.
I reject. It is true, but I do reject it because, come on, if you haven't seen the signals, they all say, well, we want to be part of the AI revolution, to which I say, if you carpet the entire country with wind farms and solar panels, you couldn't do that. So let's focus not on tax subsidized low rates. Let's focus on reliable baseload electricity like nuclear and coal and gas. And the other complaint, Steve, that often comes is that, well, there's such a backlog of for parts and gas turbines, they're not making them fast enough. To which I say, that's because we've been subsidizing the other junk for so long that the market signals have warped the entire system. The best way to change that is to eliminate those other, wind and solar in particular. These are not new industries. This is not emerging technology.
They go back to the Middle Ages.
That's exactly right. So I just think, to me, if we could fix one thing big in the Senate, it would be to expedite the the repeal of those. And
well, I hope you succeed.
When you have other industry, we should help that, but we gotta misappropriated priorities right now.
Yeah, I go back in Washington. I think maybe even a little bit further than you do, because I arrived in 1984, and back then, we were. Some of these subsidies just began with the wind and the solar stuff. And, and they kept saying just for 5 years, and then 5 years, just 5 more years, and then more years, and 5 more years. And it never ends. Yeah. And so, when they say 5 more years, what they really mean is permanent.
Yeah, that's why the 5 years turns into 10 or 12, to your point, because you have these little definitions like, do you begin the subsidy when the shovel goes in the ground? Do you begin it when it's in service? And if it's in service, then it's good for 12 years, which is 12 more. So all of these little tricks of the swamp trade are these little definitions that turn what looks like a 3-year subsidy into a 13-year subsidy. Yeah. And that's why I think we just have to clean all that out.
And it costs a lot of money. And by the way, I believe, I'm a free market guy like you are. And by the way, we're mutual friends with the great Dick Armey, who was, one of the great guys in Washington ever. And I learned a lot of my economics from him. He wasn't too happy with those subsidies either. But I actually believe, Senator, and I'd love your reaction to this. I think that we've been subsidizing that industry for 35, 40 years. And I really believe the wind and solar industry would be further along if we'd never subsidized them at all and just let the free market work.
Well, if people want it, I was an energy regulator for 10 years in North Dakota, where we produced not only a lot of coal for electricity to Minnesota, but a lot of wind as well.
Yeah, because it's windy up there.
Because it's windy, and we have these wonderful bluffs, and it works really well. However, I never once voted to allow wind energy in rate base for North Dakota ratepayers because it's not reliable. It's duplicative. You don't even you only get it about 15% of the time. So I've never been a fan of wind energy.
Okay, in our last 5 minutes, Senator, I completely agree with you. Talking to Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota, one of the best, most free market guys we've got over there, and one of the best economic minds too. I don't even know if you're a professional economist. Probably you're not. But
no, I dodged that bullet. But.
All right, I want to ask you, if I could, something you and I were talking privately on the phone on earlier this week, which is, why aren't we doing more federal land sales in this bill? This. Half of the land west of the Mississippi River, and you're west of the Mississippi River, is owned by the federal government. And I don't think the federal government's a good custodian of the land. I think if you had more private investment, you'd have more jobs, you'd have more businesses there, you'd have more wealth in these states. Well, what percentage roughly of North Dakota is owned by government?
So that's a great question. Not a lot. We have some federal lands in the west. Frankly, the Bakken, the incredibly rich Bakken oil field, does have some federal land and some federal minerals under it. However, we're not bound to the federal lands. So we have a lot of state lands. And that's why North Dakota surpassed places like, just take Alaska. Alaska's got more oil than all of us, but they're not even in the top 5, I don't think, anymore in oil production because of the federal lands. Similar to Montana. Montana is a lot of the Bakken, but they don't have the kind of activity that we have. Point.
Yeah. So that federal ownership inhibits the development. So in other words, I mean, this is an important point you're making. If it had all been federally owned land in North Dakota, you wouldn't have had the oil revolution there.
That's exactly right, Steve. We right now we're producing about 1.2 million barrels per day. It's a pretty big contribution to national freedom and security and economic security. So, but that's exactly right. In fact, the Bakken, when Harold Hamm didn't discover the Bakken, but the formula for horizontal drilling and fracking, he did it in Montana. And just about every other mineral acre since has been in North Dakota. And it's not just because of federal lands. There's also federal mineral ownership. There's federal policies that circumvent all kinds of things. I mean, they go around the Missouri River, for example, is, you end up with the Corps of Engineers more involved than you'd like to have them. We also have some of our Indian lands that have oil, and those people that live on those reservations, in our case, Mandan, Hidatsa, Rikara, do very, very well. They're a successful tribe, a wealthy tribe. So I think with regard to the selling, though, of federal lands, even though North Dakota is not a huge federal lands state, your point is right. And it's a lot of real estate. Yep. It doesn't pay taxes, by the way. Right. So that means that the cities and communities and schools and parks in these big federal land states, they get what's called in lieu of taxes. In other words, since they don't have any property taxes, then the rest of the tax-paying public pays for those things, those local things. There's a lot of reasons to consider much more sale of the land. And don't get me wrong, I'm from the land of Roosevelt. His presidential library is being built as we speak near Medora, North Dakota. The great conservationist, but he understood the value of the resources above, on top, and under the federal lands. He never intended for them to just be locked down, but rather to be utilized for the greater good.
That's Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. This is the More Money Show. We just got 2 minutes left, Senator, and I wanted to. By the way, one of the reasons I like to have people like Kevin Cramer on is I learn from them, because you're telling me stuff I didn't even know. So that's amazing. And what bothers me, and again, we only have about a minute or two left. Why is it? I hear some of the Western congressmen and senators are saying, no, don't sell the lands, when those states would benefit from more private ownership.
Yeah, I don't know what the reasoning for some people that have those lands. I think some of it's sentiment, quite honestly. There's maybe a distrust. There are other things like the relationship with Native Americans who have a great deal to say. They have to be consulted, and right. I'm not against any of those things. But right. In this bill, what we're talking about is a sliver of federal land that butts up against housing developments in cities, so that the cities can actually grow.
Yes.
You're talking about less than 0.1% of the federal land. And when you consider how much of our country's federal land, by the way, it's part of why we have trouble with Canada in the soft lumber area. That's one of the big negotiating trade things. It's not so much because Canada, although they do subsidize their soft lumber a great deal, but we cut our industry off because we don't allow timber to be harvested on our federal land.
Well,
anymore.
Senator, I am going to put you in charge of the guy who's going to change that, because we have to use our resources. We have trillions of dollars worth of them, and states like North and South Dakota and Montana and Utah and Colorado have so many resources, and we're dependent on foreign countries because we can't get it here in the great U.S. of A. Senator Cramer, keep fighting. You are a national hero.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Life insurers put life into the things you live for. The new factory that's hiring your neighbors. Maintenance on the bridge that keeps traffic flowing. The paycheck that puts pizza night on the table. Life insurers contribute $8 trillion to communities and local economies through bond purchases and other investments, and protect the financial security of 90 million American families, like yours. See how life insurers put life into America at acli.com. Paid for by the American Council of Life Insurers.